Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we will be talking about SAP interfaces. So if you're familiar with the word integration or system-to-system communication, we will be discussing these interfaces in terms of SAP. Now I have a lot of acronyms to discuss in this video. We have RFC, Bapi, Idoc, EDI, ALE, UDDI, so on and so forth. And for today's video, we will be using my blog post as the main teaching aid or visual. I will link the blog post down below, so you can always click on that and refer to it for guidance. Let me just zoom you in. So it sounds really complicated, and at some point it's easy to mistake one acronym for another. For example, we have searches in Google such as RFC versus Bapi, Idoc versus EDI versus ALE, and I will be tackling all of this later on. But just so we're all organized in this video, I will be giving you an overview of how I'm going to discuss it. So I will give you an insight to the acronym breakdown, and we're going to talk about their formal definitions. Then we're going to organize or group them together, and we're going to discuss different groupings or differentiations. Then towards the end, I have prepared a table or visual for you guys to understand the summary of all of these. Now this is going to be less technical as possible. I want to take a step back from all the technical jargons and just try to understand the basic concept, and at the same time I want you guys to associate it to something realistic so it's easier for you to understand. At least that's how I ended up understanding these concepts. So we're going to start with the acronym breakdown, and we're going to start by discussing what these acronyms stand for. So we have RFC, which stands for Remote Function Call, Bapi as Business Application Programming Interface, Idoc as Intermediate Document, EDI as Electronic Document Interchange, ALE for Application Link Enabling, UDDI for Universal Description Discovery and Integration, SOAP for Simple Object Access Protocol, Wsdl, I pronounce it as Wsdl, Web Service Definition Language, REST for Representational State Transfer, API for Application Programming Interface, FTP for File Transfer Protocol, SFTP for Secure File Transfer Protocol, or it's also known as SSH, File Transfer Protocol. So with all of these acronyms in mind, it may look something like this in your head. Let me just zoom you in. So it's quite scattered. We have everything just out there, and SAP is here in the middle. These are the interfaces that are available, but we will discuss them later on. So I have here some formal definitions, and you can browse through them in the blog post. I won't go in depth for each of them. Instead, we're going to focus on the differences and the groupings and what makes them different from one another. Okay, so going back to our image a while ago, I added some colors and we're going to organize or group them. So in this example, I added yellow over here, some pink, some blue, and some purple. And if you notice, in terms of the pink side, we've got dark pink, and we've got a little grouping over here with a dotted line. So we're going to start off with the yellow association, and that is ALE versus Idoc versus EDI. Now I have here an image of a cab or a taxi, and from their formal definitions you can think of ALE and EDI as vehicles. Technically, you can treat the Idoc as a passenger with a certain information. Basically, there are two vehicles as the options for the passenger. ALE can go SAP to SAP, so that's purely SAP. An example would be SAP Dev Environment to SAP Test, while EDI can go from SAP to non-SAP locations, vice versa. So we may have a third-party application where we send information from a .NET application to an SAP environment, so on and so forth. So there's a little table here. We have ALE, EDI, and we have Idoc. The reason why we have Idoc in the middle is because, again, this is the passenger and it contains the information. So it's fairly straightforward. We have here the main difference, which is the vehicle, where ALE is considered purely SAP to SAP communication, and for EDI, we have SAP to non-SAP. Next, we have the comparison of RFC versus Bapi, and this is the blue color association. And this time, the image is a telephone operator or a call, whichever you prefer. So the reason for that image or association is because technically RFC and Bapi are both function calls in SAP. So you can think of them as calls to operators. RFC would cater to operators that will cover local calls only, so SAP to SAP, while Bapi would cater to operators who can cover international calls, local to abroad or international, SAP to non-SAP. So RFC would facilitate local calls while Bapi would cover international calls. In essence, Bapis are technically RFC-enabled function modules, and this can get a little technical for some of you, but there are additional information written over here, so you can always refer to that. But in order to make it as simple as possible, you can always refer to this table down below where we have the comparison between RFC and Bapi. So here I mentioned that, okay, for RFC we have local calls. For Bapi we have international or external non-SAP systems to SAP. Bapi is technically an RFC-enabled function call that allows a sort of non-SAP to SAP interface. Then we have FTP versus SFTP, and that is the purple color association. For this image, I selected a mailbox. It's supposed to stand for a mail or email. So you can think of these two as documents. FTP as your regular mail, and SFTP as your encrypted email. The main purpose of FTP and SFTP is to bring files from one computer to another. So the only difference is that SFTP comes with some sort of security functionality, and there is a layer or shell of security. So that is the main difference. So that's why I associated it to an encrypted email, but not to a point where you take it too literally. One good example is if a client is expecting some files from a bank, the bank can send these files over through SFTP from their server to a client's server. So from the formal definition, we brought these files over from the bank's computer to the client's computer and will be placed in a folder. So technically, we're talking about pretty confidential files, so we want some sort of security. So here I added FTP versus SFTP, where there is a secured file transfer shell for SFTP. And the difference in terms of association, so we have the regular mail and we have some sort of encryption. Next is UDDI versus SOAP versus Wsdl versus REST versus API. This is a handful, I agree with you guys. And this is the pink color association, where we added some sort of color hierarchy. Now all of these are associated to web services, thus the image that I selected. And we can differentiate them as follows. It's quite wordy, but bear with me. UDDI is considered as the directory of web services. So keyword here is directory. And in this case, UDDI uses Wsdl to describe interfaces to web services. Right, so here in itself, we see the difference between UDDI and Wsdl. Next, we have SOAP. It is always an XML format and it serves as the message with actual data. For Wsdl, it is also an XML document, but instead of the actual data, we're talking about the description of the concerned web service. Okay, and in terms of its relation to UDDI, this document or this XML document is part of the UDDI directory, which we discussed a while ago. Next, we have REST. This is considered as an architectural style or pattern. And yeah, we colored it as a darker pink color. It is always associated to API. So for some of you, you might heard of REST API. Unlike SOAP, it's not limited to an XML file format. It can cover plain text, HTML, XML, JSON, etc. For API, this is technically, in its most simplest sense, an agreement between application. So you can think of it as a contract between applications. An API doesn't care about other applications and their backgrounds. It just needs the application to fulfill the end of the deal or the contract. And one good example of this would be a waiter. So this waiter would be your API. And you can mention your order to the waiter, and the waiter communicates and mentions your order to the chef. The chef then cooks your order, and once the order is fully cooked, the waiter then delivers the order to you. This fulfills the example, where the waiter is your API, and it sort of brings and communicates between the chef and you as the customer. You made a request, you got your order. It is honestly quite a cold example where the waiter doesn't care about the backgrounds between you and the chef. It doesn't need to know details about you. From the visuals provided a while ago, there's a red dotted line to signify all web services are APIs, but not all APIs are web services. So let me just quickly go through that again. So we have an exception for the API here. Now we have our cheat sheet table where we talk about the differences between these, and it's pretty straightforward again. So we have UDDI as the directory, SOAP as the XML-based messaging protocol, where we have the actual data or info. Then for Wsdl, it's also an XML document, but it is describing the web service. For REST, this is an architectural style, and we're not limited to XML. We have other options such as plain text, HTML, XML, JSON, and more. When we say this is an architectural style, it is also associated to APIs. API, lastly, is an agreement between application. Again, just fulfill the contract. I do not need to know your background. I just need to fulfill the contract. Now we have here a summary. Let me just view the image. To zoom you guys in, we still have the color associations between all of these, and we have some level of information such as SAP to SAP communication, if they are allowed. For RFC, for example, yes. For SAP to non-SAP, yes, it's also allowed. And we have other columns here to depict web services and the functionalities to allow non-SAP to non-SAP communication. So when I say non-SAP to non-SAP and this has a Y or yes tagging, it means that it's not limited to SAP, meaning other applications use this for their integrations. And we have some key phrases and keywords over here. There are some keywords and phrases, even more, just so we have like a review of everything, but it's all in the table here, so you can always refer to that. And if you guys are interested, I do have my additional references here. It's quite detailed from other websites as well, and some SAP formal documentation, so you can always browse through this one. I hope this helps you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.